Hi, so welcome back to video 2 of week 3. So last we ended on this basic equation, which is really a mathematical equation that you need to understand to be successful, especially in a topic like CVP. You'll see later on as we do more examples. I mean, if you understand this equation and you understand how to find the inputs for every element of this equation, then whatever the question is, really just becomes maths. So we move on to the technical considerations, which is really just the technical terms. The first technical term, which you may have heard of before, is the concept of break-even or break-even point. And break-even point is really basically where profit equals zero. In other words, a company makes no profit and no loss. So there's two methods to be able to calculate break-even. The first method is the equation method, which is the method that I encourage. So as we said, at break-even, profit equals zero. So in other words, we can say sales minus variable cost minus fixed cost equals zero. So expanding that to our equation, we would then say selling price times quantity minus variable cost times quantity minus fixed cost equals zero. So so the break-even point, and it would usually be the units, would refer to the quantity. So as you can see here, if the quantities are known and somehow in the scenario you find the selling price, and you also find the variable cost, and you also find the fixed cost, and then based on this formula, can you see you'll be able to solve for the quantity using mathematical equation. So this is the method that I encourage you to solve any break-even question or any CVP question. The trick just becomes finding the inputs. But then there is also a shortcut, which is, I mean, you can study it. I don't encourage it, but you can study it. It's called the contribution margin method. And contribution margin is basically sales less variable costs, and contribution margin per unit is basically the selling price per unit minus the variable cost per unit. Alright, so if we want to get the break-even amount of units using the contribution margin method, you just need the fixed cost divided by the contribution margin per unit. Alright, and this equation will give you the same answer that this equation will give you. Okay, so this you can, if you are required to work with the break-even in units, you can either use the equation method or you can use the formula method. I prefer the equation method, but you are welcome to use both methods. Alright, then if you are required to work out the break-even in sales, in other words, how much sales in rand value do you need to earn to break even, you can use this formula, which is fixed cost divided by C in percentage, and the C in percentage is also known as contribution margin ratio. So then you take the fixed cost and divide it by the contribution margin ratio, which gives you the break-even in sales. There's also an alternative. The alternative is to take the break-even in, help if I can spell it, in units, right? Which comes from that formula, right? And all that you need to do is multiply that by the selling price. So this answer here will give you the same answer that this formula will give you. So in other words, what I'm saying is, if you calculate the break-even in units using this formula, which is the one I encourage, then if you want to get the break-even in sales or in rand value, all that you need to do is to take the break-even in units, which comes from that equation, and multiply that with the selling price, and then you will get the same, you will get the answer. Alright, so just to recap, break-even point is where profit equals zero, and sales minus expenses equals profit, and if profit equals zero, effectively you're saying sales minus variable cost minus fixed cost equals zero. we can break this a bit further down, saying selling price times selling quantity minus variable cost times selling quantity minus fixed cost equals 0. And as long as we have 3 of the 4 variables, we can solve for the break-even in units. We can also use the break-even unit formula, which is fixed cost divided by contribution margin per unit. And then if we want our break-even in rand value, we can take the fixed cost divided by the contribution margin ratio, or we can take the break-even in units, right? And we just multiply by the selling price, and then we get the break-even in rand value as well. Right, we'll end there for now. Check back in the next video. Thanks.